In the dim and crumbling halls of the Manor of Ravenswood, a forgotten place steeped in rumor and rot, I found myself trapped, not just by fate, but by the horrors that lingered in the shadows. It began with a letter, a simple, yellowed envelope that arrived on a cold autumn morning, summoning me to settle the estate of my late uncle, Lord Alaric Ravenswood. He had been a man whispered about in half-hushed tones, a man whose demise was as mysterious as his life. The first chill that ran through my spine as I approached Ravenswood Manor should have been enough to turn me away. The house loomed on a windswept hill, its broken windows glaring like empty eyes. Dead ivy clung to its stone walls like veins on a corpse. The air itself seemed tainted, and the sky hung heavy, darkening in the late afternoon. But I was here, and I had obligations. Stepping inside, the house felt almost alive. The floorboards creaked in a way that seemed deliberate, groaning beneath my weight. I could almost feel the manor exhale, as if it had been waiting for me. Dust motes hung thick in the air, catching the weak light seeping in from the cracked windows. I closed the front door behind me, and in the silence that followed, I swore I heard a whisper. Soft, barely there, but unmistakable. I shook off the unease and made my way into the grand foyer, where portraits of my ancestors lined the walls, their painted eyes following me with an unnatural intensity. The legal papers were in the study, the caretaker had told me. I walked down the hallway, my footsteps echoing far too loudly. The study door was ajar, and as I approached, it swung open with a groan. Inside, the air was colder, and the scent of mildew was overpowering. A massive oak desk sat in the center, and beside it, a large mirror hung on the wall, its surface marred with streaks and fingerprints. I moved to the desk, opening drawers, sorting through papers, when suddenly the temperature dropped even lower, like stepping into a meat locker. My breath fogged in front of me. And then I felt it. The sensation of a cold hand brushing the back of my neck. I spun around, heart racing, but no one was there. The shadows seemed thicker now, pooling in the corners of the room, and from the depths of the mirror, I saw movement. A shape. I stepped closer, and my reflection did the same, but there was something else behind me. A figure, pale and gaunt, its eyes sunken and mouth stretched in a grotesque, open-mouthed grin. Before I could react, the mirror shattered outward, glass exploding in a storm of jagged shards that cut into my arms and face. I stumbled back, blood dripping onto the dusty floor, and the figure emerged from the broken remains, no longer confined to the mirror. It was a woman, or what had once been one. Her hair was a matted tangle, and her white gown was stained with something dark, crusted around the edges. Her eyes were empty sockets, but somehow, they seemed to see me, to pierce me. She let out a sound, a ghastly, bone-rattling wail that made my teeth ache and the walls tremble. I turned to run, but the door slammed shut on its own. Invisible hands grabbed me, shoving me into the wall, hard enough to rattle my bones. The ghost hovered closer, and the cold of her presence made the air thick, suffocating. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed, her voice echoing from the void. I struggled, but the force holding me in place was unyielding. Her fingers extended, long and claw-like, and she reached out, pressing her freezing hand against my chest. Pain exploded through me, sharp and searing, as if ice were boring into my ribs, cracking my bones. My vision blurred, and I screamed, feeling the skin on my chest blistering from her icy touch. Desperately, I reached for anything within my grasp and found an old iron candle holder on the floor. With a burst of strength fueled by pure terror, I swung it at her, connecting with her face. The impact sent her staggering back, her form flickering like a dying flame. The hold on my body released, and I fell to the floor, gasping. But she didn't vanish. Her head twisted at an unnatural angle, and she screamed again, louder, shattering the glass in the windows. Her form split apart, unraveling into tendrils of black mist that whipped around the room, slashing at me like living blades. One of the tendrils caught my leg, tearing through my jeans and leaving a bloody gash. I scrambled, adrenaline pounding, and lunged for the desk. There, buried beneath scattered papers, I saw it, an old, rusted iron key. My uncle's journals had mentioned something about iron and its power over spirits. Praying it would work, I grabbed the key and turned to face her. The mist was coalescing back into her shape, her empty eyes narrowing with rage. She lunged at me, and I thrust the iron key forward. It made contact, pressing against her chest, and her scream curdled into something broken, defeated. Her body convulsed, and for a moment, I thought it wouldn't work. But then, she began to disintegrate, her form melting into shadows that writhed and twisted before vanishing into the floorboards. Silence fell, heavy and absolute. I collapsed, clutching my bleeding chest, my breath coming in ragged, uneven gasps. The room still felt cold, but the presence was gone, leaving only the shattered mirror and the bloodstains behind. I staggered out of the study, my body aching, every instinct screaming at me to leave and never return. As I stumbled through the front door and into the biting autumn wind, I dared one last glance back at the manor. The shadows in the windows were still watching. I made it to my car, every nerve on edge, and drove until the manor was a distant, hateful memory in my rearview mirror. I've never gone back. But sometimes, on cold nights, I still feel her touch, the ghost of Ravenswood Manor, lingering beneath my skin, and I wonder if she's waiting, somewhere, for my return.